Hey, what's up? I'm Guy.
I'm John.
It's our YouTube channel. Subscribe to this channel. Give this video a like.
Check out the podcast below in the description.
You know, you remember when you used to go to a stadium, John, and they would play on the video board the cartoon race between three dots, and the race where a dot is at one moment gives you no indication as where that dot's about to be. Like someone can come from 800 feet back, it feels like, and race ahead in a half second. If the Niners and the Colts on their Buckner trade were the dots, the Niners would have been holding a lead up until the season, and no one's really paying all that close attention to the dots, it feels like. But The Athletic wrote a big article about DeForest Buckner, and it comes on the heels of us talking the other day about Kinlaw and Armstead, particularly Armstead not really flashing at all, and it feels like the Buckner dot has suddenly swarmed ahead.
Well, I think the question, I think the simple question right now is, did the Niners make the right decision? And at the time, I loved the move because you got the 13th overall pick in the draft for a guy that I thought kind of had a ceiling. And we had seen it, and his ceiling was really good. He was a Pro Bowl guy, but it's like, this guy's not going to be a Hall of Famer. This guy's not, how many Pro Bowls is he really going to make? And then he's gone to almost to another level. I didn't foresee that happening. And he's on an NFL coach who played this team this season told me that he thought they were the best front seven he's seen in years. Like the best front seven guy. And he's their best player by him and Darius Leonard, but it's clearly him. Now, they got the 13th overall pick in the draft, and they got a ton of salary cap space, but the main reason they did that was because they could keep other veteran players. And so we'll talk about the draft picks here in a second. Armstead and Buckner, at points in time last year, Buckner was the better player, but it was like, would you take Armstead for $4 or $5 million a year cheaper than just keep Buckner, just in a vacuum? I think most people are like, yeah, I'd probably, do that. I think we've learned there's not a human alive, even for that number gap, that would not rather have Buckner, right? At the end of the day, Armstead, just by himself, he makes $17 million. He's probably a $10 million player. Like, he's a good NFL player. But he's not a $17 million player. We've learned that this year. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. Yep. I think that's a fair statement. 5-85 for him, 4-84 for DeForest.
While we still are on just Buckner in a vacuum, if you just look at the draft, because that draft was really good, the top 7. Jared Goff, 1 overall, max quarterback, still on the Rams. We can argue how much he should have got paid, but he's a franchise quarterback. Carson Wentz, same thing. Joey Bosa, the Chargers, who historically butt heads over money, right? They've had long holdouts, them and Rivers. Obviously, LT, our buddy Lorenzo Neal's talked about it forever. He was like one of the best players in the history of the franchise, and they were always arguing over money. They paid Joey Bosa. He's like their cornerstone. Zeke Elliott. Now, whether it was the right move or not, like Jerry went all in on him. He's still on the team. Jalen Ramsey demanded a trade out of the worst organization in the league, but any team in the league would have wanted that guy. Like, he was a franchise corner. He's arguably the best corner in the league. And then Ronnie Stanley, who was beloved by Baltimore. They paid him huge money. Sucks for him. He got his leg snapped, but franchise level left tackle. All those guys beside Ramsey who demanded a trade are still on their own team. Buckner, who like a Bosa, like a Ronnie Stanley, wanted to stay. Like, he wasn't actively trying to leave. He was a team captain. They traded him. So I would say the trade of Ramsey and the trade of Buckner, kind of polar opposite trades, even though both guys were traded. One guy was like, fuck you guys, get me out of here. I hate Tom Coughlin. I hate the organization. Buckner wants to stay at a high number.
And the 49ers want him to stay.
Yeah.
They love him.
But they made an organizational decision, and I think it's just going to be up for debate moving forward. Now, the trade of him didn't just lead to keeping Armstead and Ward. It led to 2 draft picks.
Right.
So
it's really not about Buckner versus Armstead. Because the one thing I would disagree with a little is I think even though Armstead's numbers were higher, like his sack total was higher than Buckner's last year, right? Do you think at any point you really felt like Armstead was the better player than Buckner?
No.
Okay.
But I think there was a marginal gap. Like, let's say if Buckner's a 10 out of 10, you could justify in your head Armstead's an 8 out of 10, so we get the cheaper guy.
Right. When you bring the money into play, I agree with what you said. I just wanted to clarify whether or not you thought at any point he was the better player. I didn't think so either. The numbers are really similar. But I think one thing is clear, right? Buckner, because Buckner's not a guy box score scouting the Colts that jumps off the page right now, right? In the way that Aaron Donald does. Yeah. Clearly he affects games in so many ways. Buckner is the guy. Bosa is this level player. Donald is this level player. Although Bosa makes everyone better and the numbers show up, right? Plays a different position. Buckner is the guy that makes other people money. Armstead, I think we would say at this point, is the guy that made, again, fantastic player, but needed somebody else there with him, right? Needs to have the type of year that he got paid to have. And the money is why you talk about him this way.
I think you see this a lot in the NBA when guys go get paid and then they like get their own team. And then you look back, you go, God, he was just playing with good players. He's a good player, but at the end of the day, he's a role player. Like Harrison Barnes is a good example, who's got multiple huge contracts since leaving the Warriors. And every time he gets that contract, you're like, I wish we were paying him half as much as we were paying him. We still want the guy in your team. Like every team in the NFL would take Eric Armstead. I think he'd start for basically every team in the NFL. But when you just look at the money in football, because it's a hard cap, does really matter. And the Niners, because they were kind of capped out moving forward, had to make a tough decision. And they made it based on him, but he still got a lot of money. It's not like it'd be one thing if they were paying him $10 million. They had extra, like they did allocate a lot of resources to him. Now, part of the trade was they had no draft picks because they had made trades for Emmanuel Sanders. They had made trades for D4. Their cupboard was bare. And then they were so fucking good, they only had the 31st pick in the draft. So they basically traded him for as much as they did to re-sign their own players. Was it to recoup the draft picks? And 13 is a very powerful move. And then they traded back a spot. They were able to use a pick in their trade back to get Ayuk. So basically, a huge part of the trade led to Kinlaw and Ayuk. I think we think Ayuk has a chance to be a really good player. Kinlaw, who is replacing Buckner, right? It'd be one thing if like he's a linebacker, he's a lineman, he's a defensive tackle. Like he's got to be good. Now he doesn't have to be Buckner, but he has to be like you feel really good about him being a starting player. And right now that is a major question mark, right?
But I will say this, right? Part of why you thought Kinlaw, part of why I definitely felt comfortable betting on Kinlaw was because you thought, well, he'll have to be the third best player on the defense. He's got Nick Bosa, right? When the Niners pay Armstead, you are paying him, but you're paying him in the context of he doesn't have to be our best pass rusher because we got Nick Bosa. So he should be more valuable because he's on the other side of Nick Bosa or inside Nick Bosa, right? That hasn't been the case this year, which, while, yes, it highlights the fact that maybe he's not a $17 million a year player, they thought, well, with Nick Bosa, he might be a $17 million a year player, right? And that guy hasn't played. So that's kind of affected at least the results to this point. But I think when we saw the value, we thought, yeah, Buckner's really good, but this all makes sense. Armstead doesn't have to be as good as Buckner, and this all makes sense. And now it's really long-term going to be about Ayuk and going to be about Kinlaw. Even if Ayuk turns out to be fantastic, that really helps if it's just him. If Kinlaw's solid, but he's not an Pro Bowler, forget all pro. If Ayuk's really good, like you don't get pick 117 if you don't trade from 13 to 14. And if you don't trade from 13 to 14, you don't get 117. You may not move up from 31 to 25 to get Ayuk.
Well, one problem could be, Guy, is, I was going to say you could have just taken Wirfs, who's been an all-pro level offensive tackle, and then not had to trade for Trent Williams, who's going to be a free agent. Like, there are just a lot of moves. I think in a vacuum through half of season, and that's trades or not.
And I'll add to the what if. Sorry, maybe you take a different receiver. You stay at 31 and take.
Higgins is actually coming on else. For Burrow.
Higgins has been good. Pittman, Claypool, Hamler,
There were options.
Claypool would have fit, I think.
But one thing came out clear that Kyle loved Ayuk. Like he was the number 2 guy on their board behind CeeDee Lamb. Simply put, we can't give a this is not a final grade. But right now, through half the season, it's a win for the Colts and a loss for the Niners in the trade. Now, trades are fluid. Things change. Guys improve, and that's when you pick young players, especially Kinlaw, who was a raw young player. That's part of the deal because you knew that Buckner was not going to be like he was going to be solid. Now I think even taking his game up a notch. I think Colts would tell you that, and definitely what he means to their team. Like he's a multiplier. And that's the Niners knew that. Team captain, they love the guy. I actually think, wouldn't you say, for as much as anyone on the team, including Richard Sherman and Joe Staley, like Buckner was like to me when I think of that team last year, I think like Joe Staley, Richard Sherman, and Buckner were like the team captains. Like just they spoke for the team. But DeForest spoke after every game. He was kind of the heartbeat of the team just with his effort. Now, Bosa was a better player, but it's like Buckner led the squad and probably was the team leader of the defense at the end of the day, is even more than Sherman just because he's been there longer. And they ultimately made a decision.
The other thing I would add to
this decision is just
let me add
one
more
to come on.
Would the 49ers have more wins if DeForest Buckner was on this team this year?
But they'd have a better player.
No, I understand, but I'm just saying, like,
maybe
this year has turned into maybe they would. I'm not saying they would or they wouldn't.
Maybe he makes a play.
I'm just saying this year has turned into a reset year, and even if he's worth another win, this team isn't winning the Super Bowl this year, right? And we knew as a team they've been getting more expensive. So the point being, having Kinlaw, having Ayuk, just in that context, I think is very valuable to them.
And at the end of the day, Armstead is on a shorter contract in terms of the guaranteed money. It was basically just a 2-year deal. And you still want, that's the thing. Like Armstead's not a bad player, right? It's not like he just went Albert Haynesworth, like, screw it, I'm over it. We've learned without Bosa on the field and without just other good players around him, he's just a solid starter. That's just what he is.
Yeah. Yep. And with those guys around, he's an above average starter.
Yeah.
But
probably still a little overpaid, but you can deal with it.
Right. Yeah, it's tough.
I mean, I feel the Colts just are feeling great about it. The Niners
I think one it's probably been a little easier for Niner fans to take because we just haven't seen the Colts. Like Thursday, they play a primetime game. We haven't really seen a lot of the Colts, right?
Yeah.
They're good, but I don't think everyone's really taking them seriously. Maybe because every time you watch a highlight, Phillips just floating the ball. But there is a chance that this team's just around, that they do end up playing in some big games down the stretch and into the postseason.
Well, they're just going to be good the next couple of years. Like they're going to win 9-10 games with an average Phillip Rivers, right? Imagine if they make a move for Sam Darnold, they trade up to get a quarterback, they just upgrade the quarterback position. Like they're going to be good for the foreseeable, like the next couple of years.
And this guy's in the middle of it.
The Niners have some question marks right now.
Really, wouldn't you say the Colts? I would kind of, when I think of their organization the last few years, I think about them not reaching maybe where they could. Their best players always feel like they're hurt. Marlon Mack hurt.
T.Y.'s always injured.
hurt. They're always figuring out who their quarterback is. Like, that's kind of been an issue for them. They haven't, it doesn't feel like, had just a consistent, everyday, all-pro level player.
Well, to me, here's the curveball they always have in their back pocket, and I'm doing this 24/7 if I'm Chris Ballard. I'm begging the guy to come back. And I do think if you're Andrew Luck, that if you do get the itch, you're coming back to a loaded squad who's built for elite defense, elite offensive line. It is built for him to come back.
I wonder what he's up to.
Would you be shocked if Andrew Luck came back? Because I wouldn't be.
No, I wouldn't be. I mean, would I be any more shocked than when he retired? No. But I don't know what he's been doing.
Yeah, to me, that's the move.
Like, Jason Witten was doing Monday Night Football. Like, he was around the game. Has Andrew Luck watched a snap?
Yeah, but to me, that doesn't matter as much with him because his mind.
Yeah, I just wonder, I just don't know if he cares about football right now.
See,
you know what I mean?
See, I think he did. I think the injuries just ruined him. And I think
but if he's just having a good time, like Witten was around it and was like, God, I miss it. Does Luck miss it? I have no idea.
Yeah, I just think if he does miss it, which is the great trump card with Luck, the team is positioned to get, like, if they were to get him back, wouldn't they immediately be a Super Bowl contender?
If we get a sniff that, like, Luck is coming back, there's not going to be will Luck go play for the Niners? Will they trade him? It's just he'd come back to play for the Colts.
Yeah, that's why they kept paying him, remember? They didn't ask for any of the shit back. That was smart.